Okay, thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Paul Heinrich, and I'm chairing this meeting of the Development Committee. If you haven't attended one of these meetings before, the officers who provide and present our reports and offer technical advice sit either side of me, top table. In front of me in the central area sit the members of the committee who'll be making decisions on the items on the agenda. Will officers please introduce themselves?
Morning, I'm Fiona Croxton, Solicitor to the Council.
Good morning, Jeff Lyon, Development Manager.
Good morning, Russell Stock, Senior Planning Officer.
Lauren Gregory, Democratic Services.
David Gleeson, Assistant Director for Planning.
Thank you. Welcome to members of the public in attendance and those who are viewing this meeting remotely. For those members of the public who registered to speak, I'll call you to the front when it is your turn to the end of this bench. There's a microphone there. Yeah, I'll remind you now, you get 3 minutes to speak and no more. The usual notices: fire alarm. We're not expecting a drill today, so if the alarm does sound, please follow the officers using the marked exits and assemble in the car park at the front of the building or by the flagpole at the rear. Do not use the lift. Could I ask that mobile phones are turned off, please, or to silent? Thank you. We'll take a break, an appropriate point, usually around 11, depending on how we progress with the items on the agenda. Apologies, please, Lauren.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Peter Fisher, Councillor Liz Vickers and Councillor Adam Varley. We have one substitute present, Councillor Wendy Fredericks for Councillor Peter Fisher.
Thank you. Item 4, items of urgent business. I have none.
None received.
Thank you. Item 5, the order of business will be as detailed on your agendas. Item 6, declarations of interest. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, on item 7, I will be speaking as the local member, and as I called the application in, I won't be voting, therefore abstaining or speaking in the members' debate.
Thank you. Councillor Beattie, you have an item in your ward. Okay, thank you. Any other declarations? Okay, let's move straight on then to the item 7. Hunworth PF 24/2458. You ready, Russell?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So this application is based at the Honey Bowl in Hunworth and seeks 2 main elements. One being works to the Honey Bowl itself to reduce the bar area and create 4 guest bedrooms. The other part of the application is for the erection of 6 dwellings, demolition of an agricultural building on the site to the north. So the application, we'll just run through the slides as we go through. So I'll just sort of cover off some of the main issues. The principle of the works to the Honey Bowl are supported by local and national policy. The Honey Bowl is a public house and an asset of community value, which I'll touch on a bit in a bit later. But in principle, works to support the vitality and viability of a local facility such as the Honey Bowl are supported in policy. So those works are in principle acceptable, subject to criteria set out in the report. The dwellings, Hunworth is designated as countryside in our local plan. So from a spatial strategy point of view, 6 dwellings are not supported. So the proposed 6 dwellings are contrary to the spatial strategy. Again, that's noted in the report, and we'll come on to the planning balance at the end. One of the other key aspects of the scheme is that of the 6 dwellings proposed, 2 are to be affordable housing. So those would be secured through the legal agreement that's required as part of the application. Policy would require 1 of the dwellings on that site to be affordable housing. So there's 1 additional affordable house beyond policy requirements. And that's an additional benefit to the scheme. In terms of highways, the Highways Authority have objected to the application. Their objections are largely centred around the poor accessibility of the site, which officers have agreed with and take a similar view. And there's reference to a recent appeal down King Street, where the inspector found similarly that Hunworth was not a well served location in terms of facilities, services and modes of low carbon transport. So again, that weighs against the scheme and is part of the thrown into the balance at the end. Part of the scheme, if we carry on through the slides, keep going through the photos. Part of the scheme also involves flood mitigation works. Once we get to the relevant slides, you'll see the proposed attenuation basin that is looking to intercept runoff from the agricultural fields behind and to divert it into the field, retain it there and allow it to infiltrate rather than it rushing down through the application site, which is currently, as you can see there, an area of hard standing used for agricultural storage, where water can flow quite quickly off sort of the impermeable surfaces and has caused flooding in the past. So part of the scheme looks to mitigate those impacts that have been taking place through this attenuation basin. In terms of the sorry, just lost my train of thought. There's a number of infrastructure requirements set out on page 34 of the agenda, and that includes the 2 affordable housing, GI RAMS contributions, open space, and a requirement to secure the works to the Honeybough to ensure that those works are done in a timely manner in relation to the rest of the development. It's considered that those works and the investment that's going to take place to create those 4 bedrooms would help, hopefully help bring the Honeybough back into use and make it a more viable asset moving forward. So that's been considered. Alongside that, there's the biodiversity net gain monitoring fee, because the on-site delivery of biodiversity net gain is likely to be considered significant. So there needs to be a requirement to monitor that and the standard monitoring fee. So I briefly highlight page 35 of the agenda, which covers the asset of community value status of the Honeybough. That's set out there, and the planning considerations around that are set out for you to consider. So if we just move now, I'll move on to the balance section, because there's a number of competing factors with this scheme. As I mentioned, the spatial strategy doesn't support dwellings in this location. On top of that, the accessibility of the site being poor isn't supported, and there would be a high reliance on private cars to access facilities and services, day-to-day needs. So those are negatives and they weigh significantly against the scheme. However, as you can see on sort of pages 37 through to 39, 40, there's also a number of benefits associated with the scheme, including the affordable housing, including the investment into the pub, the flood mitigation, and the provision of 6 dwellings generally. So overall, having weighed the harms and the benefits, the balance recommendation is to approve, subject to that 106 and a number of conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a number of speakers. To start with the Parish Council speaker, Councillor Carl Carter. When you're ready.
Yes, good morning. The Honeybell Pub is a much loved 300-year-old North Norfolk institution and is at the heart of our community in Hunworth. The closure has had a major effect on the social life of the village, and particularly for those who live alone and have previously enjoyed the safe and social atmosphere of the pub. The parish council have rejected previous schemes by Stoddy Estate to overdevelop the site, reducing both the car parking and the pub garden to build housing. This forced us to apply and have granted an asset of community value to protect the pub and the car park area for the future. This planning application today has split opinions in the village, with the proposal for building any houses in this conservation area being against most planning policies and the view that the pub should not be the reason for putting aside those policies. Your planning officers are having to judge whether the work required on the pub is a material consideration to allow the housing development on the adjacent farmyard, and as a parish council, we've tried to do the same. We do agree that the pub needs money spent on it to make it viable going forward. A lack of maintenance and foul drains that do not work are just part of the list of work that needs to be done, and the conversion of part of the large dining area to guest bedrooms appears to make sense. All this requires funding, and where many in the village think Stoddy Estate should pay for this work from their own resources or sell the pub, Stoddy Estate have decided to link the pub refurbishment to the profit made from the building on their farmyard. So the question for the parish council is whether this is a balance that we can agree. The application today leaves the existing site of the pub protected with no building on the car park and pub garden. A new foul drainage system will be installed and the viability of the pub should be enhanced with the guest bedroom offer. This will have achieved our aim to leave the pub site as is, to allow sufficient car parking for this destination pub and retain the pub garden. If all the work is done to a high standard, the Honey Bell will have a chance to compete in a very competitive market. In addition, the housing proposal has been reduced from 10 to 6 and only on the farmyard site. Having considered that balance carefully, the parish council have agreed to support the application before you today, and we hope you'll do the same. We understand that Stoddy Estate will have to agree a section 106 that will link the housing development timing to the requirement to do the work on the pub. We're disappointed that what the S106 cannot require Stoddy Estate to open the pub as a condition of building the houses, which is the only reason we're supporting this application. Linking the work on the pub to phases of building houses is suboptimal and has the potential to see the pub closed for longer than is necessary. On that basis, if this planning application is agreed today, we're asking Stoddy Estate to prioritise the work on the pub rather than rely on S106 undertakings. From the very start, Stoddy Estate have told us that this is all about the pub. Well, Stoddy Estate, it's time to put your money where your mouth is, do the pub work first and give us our pub back.
Thank you. Very well timed. One supporting speaker, being no objecting speaker, supporting speaker, Charlie McNichol.
Good morning, all. My name is Charlie McNichol, the Managing Director of Stoddy Estate. This proposal is about making a very major investment into the estate's much-loved pub, the Honey Bell, while at the same time replacing a sugar beet pad in the centre of Hunworth with a few family homes. The Honey Bell has been owned by the estate for many generations. However, like many rural pubs, it has recently faced serious financial challenges. We've had 4 experienced operators either fail completely or leave. The most recent tenants marketed the lease for 2 years publicly and no one credible came forward. And we have routinely subsidised the pub, but still it has failed in its current form. This proposal is about fixing that by introducing 4 guest bedrooms to create a more sustainable rural model. The independent pub advisors Christie's state that these changes will make the pub viable and attractive to operators. We have been working on this scheme for over 2 years, engaging with the parish council, the community, your officers, and elected member from the very outset when the last operator shut the pub. We have listened carefully to concerns and made the following changes. A 40% reduction in scale from 10 houses to 6. No development on the pub site, leaving the large car park and garden as they are. All housing relocated to the concrete farmyard and sugar beet pad next door, and the provision of double the affordable housing that is required. And a complete redesign of drainage, reducing hard standing by 75%, and in close coordination with the Environment Agency, introducing new systems for flood resilience. As a result, the scheme is now supported by planning officers, the parish council, the ward councillor, and all statutory and North Norfolk consultees, with the exception of Highways. Highways raise no objection on access, safety, or visibility. Their concern is simply the principle of new housing of any description in rural villages. We respectfully take a different view. In recent years, we have delivered 11 new homes within the conservation area, the majority of which we retain and let to local working families. These 6 homes in Hunworth will be the first new houses in Hunworth for over 40 years. They will represent the first delivery or first ever delivery of social housing in the parish of Hunworth and Stoddy. They'll provide a mix of 2, 3, 4-bed homes that support the long-term sustainability of the village and the pub. And they will deliver the investment into the pub and an additional £40,000 of Section 106 contributions. In closing, finished? Sorry, that's fine.
Okay, and we move to local member. You have 5 minutes, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I address this item as the local member for Stoddy Ward. It's taken nearly 2 years to arrive at the proposal you have before you today, following the closure of this much-loved village pub. The village and wider community looked on with disbelief when it closed in 2024. They were shocked into immediate action to register the Honeybell as an asset of community value in an attempt to save it. The initial scheme of 10 dwellings to create a refurbishment fund with dwellings both to the rear and side of the pub without provision for food or residential accommodation and reduced parking spaces caused some anxiety for local people. The applicants were proactive in arranging several meetings with the public, parish council and myself to find a way to gain support from the community for a design that would future-proof the refurbishment and opening of the pub for years to come. I refer members to paragraph 98 of the current NPPF, which provides that planning decisions should recognise the role of pubs in supporting social well-being and ensuring they remain part of an integrated, sustainable community. Our local plan policy HE3 permits pubs in the countryside when they meet the needs of local communities like Hunworth and Stoddy. By refining the scheme, the applicants have reduced from 10 to 6 dwellings to offer 2 market rent, 2 affordable units, which, as the officer has stated, is 1 more than recommended by planning policy and is therefore a benefit, and also 2 affordable rent units with measures to address surface water flooding affecting neighbouring properties and removing farm vehicular traffic has made this proposal more acceptable. The applicant has already arranged for a registered housing provider to acquire the affordable units, subject to consent being granted. The issue of ensuring that sufficient proceeds of sale from the dwellings to refurb the pub is vital to justify the granting of consent and will need to be secured by a Section 106 agreement. As a consequence, the pub must be entirely refurbed before the 2 market rate dwellings are occupied, and the agreement will provide for this. I take this opportunity to thank our planning solicitor for her expertise in achieving this outcome. I note that care will be taken to use vernacular materials and alterations to the pub will be negligible to preserve its character, and the associated dwellings will have an informal and rural appearance. I'm at a loss as to understand why this pub is not a listed building. I say to those who resist any new buildings or dwellings in the village as too high a price to pay for restoring this essential community asset, you need to think again about preserving the village as if it were a museum exhibit. I close by saying I hope the committee, in accepting the officer's recommendation for approval, will enable the Honeybell to open again. Perhaps it will become a film location and invite royal visitors like it has in the past through its doors in the future, as well as receiving affection from its patrons, sorry. We should take this opportunity to not allow this valued facility to become a sad statistic as yet another closure like the 3,000 pubs since 2020 in the UK and closing currently at an average of 8 every week. Mr. Chairman, it's time to call last orders on this application and to grant approval for the reasons I have given today. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Brown. Debate. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Can one of the officers confirm whether Class Q is acceptable on that building or not, or pass comment? Because if there's a PD right there, yeah, do you see that?
That hasn't particularly been considered. The barn that exists is an open-sided pole barn, so potentially not. But yeah, that's not been a material consideration.
I think it looks like a lovely high quality application, and I think I completely agree with the pub sort of being the hub and for people to socialise. I'd be very happy to propose this application.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. I am very, very pleased that this particular application has come to us today, because I think it's absolutely vital that village pubs are brought to the forefront. It is quite right, they are the hub. And since COVID in particular, things have gone a little bit more difficult. Now, brilliant work done with the officers and the applicant to get it right. We've got everything we need. I'm more than happy to second it.
Well, I was waiting to say it's all been said. I was going to second it.
I'd like to commend the officer and the people who worked on this. It's obviously been a 2-year project in a very sensitive area with lots of pros and lots of cons. But I support the application in principle because it retains a pub, and I won't add to whatever has been said in that respect, and provides some very needed additional housing in this area. So I would propose, I would support this application.
This application actually reminds me of another one that we've done on the coast. It's about affordable homes for those that actually work in the pub, because it's really difficult to get people to work in pubs where they have to travel long distances. So I absolutely think this is a great scheme, and as the parish council says, I just hope that the pub is prioritised, but I'm very grateful for the affordable homes.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Chair. I would emphasise that I agree with everything has been said already, but I don't think it's that unsustainable a location, actually. It's only about 2 inches from Holt. You could cycle there very easily. It's a bit of a dangerous road, but I must say, but I wouldn't say that sustainability was a big issue here. And I agree about the affordable housing. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Nobody else to add? We have proposed by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Fitch-Tillett. The recommendation is for approval. Can we take the vote, please, Lauren?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Beattie.
For.
Councillor Brown is abstaining as local member. Councillor Fitch-Tillett. For. Councillor Fredericks. For. Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Hankins.
For.
Councillor Holiday. Councillor MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Neverway. Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor John Toy.
For.
And Councillor Kim Toy. For. That is approved.
Thank you, members. The application is approved. We'll now move swiftly on to Agenda item 8, Scotto, PF/25/2438. Well, go on.
Yeah, you can click. Yeah, that's fine. All right. Right. Good morning, members. Okay, you good to go? Okay. Good morning, members. This application seeks the retrospective construction of a two-storey dwelling following the removal of the previous building. The site is located on North Walsham Road, the village of Scotto, to the north of Three Horseshoes House, previously a public house. This aerial photograph taken in July 2025 shows the site as it was with the previous building, Oddfellows Barn, in place, with works having started implementing the previous approval RV 24/1618 by removal of the roof. The site is located on the edge of the village, close to the crossroads of Tunstead Road and the Fairstead. The site is located within the designated countryside area under our local policy SS2 and was considered curtilage listed by the local planning authority owing to its historic association with the adjacent former Three Horseshoes public house, which is Grade 2 listed. The submitted plans are the previous ones approved under RV 24/1618. The site plan shows the layout, including the amenity space and parking areas. The proposed ground floor includes a large dining family area, kitchen, utility room, and study. Within the centre of the building is a double stairway allowing access to the first floor. The first floor plan includes 6 bedrooms. One of these is a master bedroom with 2 bathrooms. This floor does not extend over the kitchen area, keeping it retained as a single story with vaulted ceiling. This is the shed to be retained, which is incidental to the dwelling's use. The front elevation faces North Walsham Road. The previous approval included replacement of the roof tiles, which is retained here. This is well, the rear elevation. I've lost my own now. Oh yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, this is the rear elevation, which just shows all the additional openings. This is also part of the previous approval. The existing side elevation shows the retained window, but this has all been removed as well. This is the shed. This has been completed in full. Again, it's just incidental to the rear of the building. So the following slides show a timeline of the site from 2023 to the present to give some context to the progression of the application and its preceding approved applications. I've included the date taken and location on site of the photo to the left of each picture. So you could just scroll through these, I think, just sort of showing. So these are in 2023, 2024, September. That's the side elevation. And works had started to be carried out on site, as you can see. That was on my site visit. There were a number of trees at the rear of the site which were removed. These are conditioned to be replaced in the event of the previous approval as part of a landscaping plan as well. And then, as you can see, the previous building appears to have been removed piecemeal, and efforts to support the historic fabric are shown. This is from June last year. As you see, it's being held up by those wooden struts, but yeah, the wall is still there at that point. And then this photo shows that wall with the new build. So you can see the contrast between the two brickworks there. Yeah, this is internal views, and the building remains similar to this in its appearance today. Yeah, and that's this is December last year. There's no original fabric remaining at this point, so that's why it's considered a new build. Okay, so yeah, just carry to this. Yeah, one more. It's like 3 more. So yeah, just so you can see where we're up to at this point. Yeah, and then this is February. That wall is gone now, and this is all new build. Okay. In conclusion, and as laid out within the committee report, the recommendation to members is one of refusal on the grounds of the principle of the development, ecology, and the design and heritage impacts. And the reasons are as follows. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you. Speakers, and I have no parish speaker, although Democratic Services did approach them as late as yesterday to get a statement from them. None has been received. Any statement from theirs is as shown in your papers. I have no objecting speaker. Thank you. No objecting speaker. Supporting speaker I have down on my list as Jason Parker. Present. The front, please. I need to make it clear that only one person is able to speak.
speaking. They're here for questions. May I make a point?
Okay, we can't have any interruptions from others.
Sure. Can I make a point before I start? There is actually a letter from the parish council that was sent to the case officer that was requested to be read out as a backup.
Where one was received, it was placed on the planning portal and has been readily available to members. Well, you have a maximum of 3 minutes and it will be timed.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jason Parker. I've got involved with this case. I'm a chartered planning consultant and I have one of the applicants with me just for questions. This is quite a difficult case and life-changing. It's not a speculative development, but a family who set out to do everything properly, obtained planning permission, discharged conditions, and began converting their building lawfully. So work has begun. As set out in section 2 of my members' briefing report, this site benefits from a lawfully implemented planning permission, and it is critical that it is considered on that basis, not as a new dwelling in the countryside. During the works, once the asbestos roof was removed, the true condition of the structure became clear. Walls began to foul, bricks crumbled, the applicants installed bracing on the inside of the building and the outside, as you saw in some of the photos, and those steps were taken, but despite their efforts, the structure progressively started to deteriorate and collapse. Members, this is not a case of someone trying to get around policy. This is a case of a building physically failing during lawful works. What is particularly concerning, and I say this respectfully, is the planning application process. As highlighted in section 5 of my report, the enforcement officer attended the site numerous times, saw the condition, was provided with evidence, including the engineer's report. The applicants were advised to submit an application to regulise the situation. They also kept him informed as the building deteriorated. However, neither the applicant nor myself received any meaningful engagement from the case officer. We made repeated attempts. I left voicemail messages. I sent lots of emails. I sent lots of evidence, submissions, including about abandonment. So did the applicant. We sought to address any concerns. We were left in the dark. We heard nothing. It was only when the committee report was published that we became aware of concerns. Members, this is not just our view. The council itself has accepted this. We made a complaint, and that has been accepted by the council, that the communication could and should have been better. That lack of communication has had real consequences because it's meant that we're not given the opportunity to address the officer's concerns. And the term of abandonment has not been addressed properly. As set out in section 2 of my report, this is not a case of abandonment. The applicants live on site. There is a postal address, a postal box, utilities, continuous use. There is the shed. They've planted the trees. There is no cessation. There's a clear intent to complete the development. Members, the law is clear. Development may be incapable of completion, but that does not mean the use has been abandoned. Turning to the proposal, as explained in section 3 of my report, this is not a new build, it's a reconstruction using bricks that have been salvaged and cleaned. 8,000 bricks have been salvaged and cleaned from this site, and the applicants have started to reconstruct it. They've carefully
I
done
have to
that.
stop you there, I'm afraid. Your 3 minutes is up.
What is the harm?
Thank you. The local member is Councillor Penfold, albeit he's not expected to attend, and the item was called in by the development manager in any case. Thank you. Mr. Long, please, yeah.
Just, Mr. Parker's committee members briefing report, we've just got to add some legal clarification on this so that members are fully aware of the position on 2 major factors. One is the assertion that the residential use of the site has been established, and the other is I just need to have to talk members through about the submission talks a lot about the principle of abandonment. On the first point, there is no evidence that there has ever been any residential occupation of the building, which was the barn to start with. No material change of use to residential has happened because the barn was never physically adapted to be used as a home. It was never previously converted and used as a dwelling, so it has never actually attained, that's the barn that fell down, knocked down, has never attained a dwelling status to begin with. So that's the first clarification on point 2 of the briefing report. And the other point I need to just tell members about is the principle of abandonment. Abandonment is a legal concept that refers to the possible loss of existing lawful use rights. So in the case of a house, if it was maybe occupied many years ago, you then have to consider whether it's fallen into such a state of disrepair that its residential status has been lost. Here, the issue of abandonment is not really relevant to the site because the building that was on the site was in the past never occupied as a dwelling, so there was never any existing residential use right to be abandoned. It never attained that dwelling status to begin with. So it can't be abandoned as a dwelling because you've got to assume it was once used as a dwelling to be abandoned. So we have to take legal issue with the points in that briefing note. And in any event, the previous permission to convert the building required some of the existing structure to remain substantially intact. Here, there is nothing left of the building, so it now necessitates a complete rebuild. So even if abandonment were relevant, it probably fails the test anyway because there's nothing to abandon because the building has completely gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Debate. Going to start. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Could you confirm what percentage of new bricks have been put into the facade? Is it all faced with old bricks or?
I don't have that information. That's not been provided. by the applicant. So I don't know how much is new and how much is old at the point of determination.
I think the only indication we've had, Councillor, is that we've been told by Mr Parker that 8,000 bricks have been cleaned and reused. So, I'm seeing go, I think. Do you want to, any further comment to Councillor? I'll go to Councillor Toy after that.
Are we able to ask the applicant?
Would that be useful to committee? Could you just detail the amount of previous material that has been reused very briefly, please?
Yeah, we've cleaned over 8,000 bricks, most of which we've retained for the front, the fascia. We're also installing the big arched window that's going back, reinstalling. So it will look exactly as it would have done given our previous permission. We've retained as much of the materials as we can. We're hoping to reinstall the big cartwheel lights that are renowned throughout the village. And the parish council are also very supportive of our application.
Thank you. Councillor John Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always difficult this because, you know, we've got a locally listed building next to a listed building. However, I think we have to look and say, what's the consequences? And I've seen a similar, we've had a similar application in here that was in my ward where similar went on and that ended up getting approved. It took a couple of goes because if we refuse this, that locally listed building has gone. Provided it's redone sympathetically, it goes back. However, we don't want to encourage people to knock buildings down, and we need to be sure that efforts were made, and they were. You know, if we look at much of medieval Belgium, which isn't, you know, rebuilding buildings to look as they did and to keep that context as it was is often acceptable. And I'm not convinced that this is the right decision in this case. I'm prepared to listen to the debate further, but I think we need to say, what if, you know, if we don't approve this, we've now just got a ruin sat there where we have a listed building. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Holliday.
Putting on one side that there's difficulty that the permissions fallen away, could you just clarify what the original permission was? 24/16/19, is that possible?
Yeah, so the original permission was in 2012, and that sought the conversion of the Three Horseshoes public house next door, and Oddfellows Barn, which is the previous building, into two dwellings, converting both of them. The Three Horseshoes pub was completed, substantially finished, all done, but works hadn't begun on Oddfellows Barn until in the last few years when this variation of condition approval was applied for, which only sought changes to Oddfellows Barn. But because permission, the works had been completed on Three Horseshoes pub, the permission was extant. So, you know, they had all the time in the world once that other half had been granted. So the variation of condition only applied to Oddfellows Barn, just to change the scheme from what was originally approved in 2012. So that's why the permission has fallen away, because of the building being removed.
Thank you. Firstly, I think retrospective planning cases are always difficult because there are certain feelings of, well, why didn't they follow the process correctly? And my original question was to ask why planning were not consulted about the true condition of the building, but obviously that did happen. So my question now is, I'd like to get a response from planning as to why you didn't respond to the emails about the real conditions, so you could consult and give advice. And this, you know, it's on both sides really, because why continue and demolish the building? Yeah, why continue and demolish the building, knowing that that isn't what the permission was given for? So yeah, that's all I have to say. I've just got those two questions. Why did planning consult them and advise them? And why did it continue when the permission was really not the same as it was before? And I do understand that they're using the original bricks, and that is great. And if that can be accepted, I'm in full support of that. But I think we've got to make it quite clear that retrospective cases cannot be allowed to increase, because people think that they can, and I'm not saying that these people are, but they're actually trying to change the process. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Could officers respond to those 2 points, please? So firstly, the issue around communication, and secondly, as to when it was known that the building was in danger of collapse and had to be demolished for that reason.
I mean, I don't have the precise date of when this first came to our attention, but it came to our attention via our planning enforcement colleagues. So it was reported to our planning enforcement colleagues that works were taking place that looked like demolition of the building when it was had a permission in place for conversion. So it came under our planning enforcement colleagues' radar, and they obviously investigated and got in contact with the applicant about the next steps. So that's what ultimately led to a planning application being submitted, because what was originally approved and what had been commenced was no longer applicable because the building had been demolished, and it's a different set of policy criteria apply for replacement building as opposed to a new build in the countryside. So, I mean, we've put our hands up. We said, yeah, maybe we could have dealt with issues in a slightly better way in terms of communication, but that doesn't necessarily change the planning facts before the committee today. This is a new build dwelling in the countryside. The previous permission has been lost because of the demolition. It's never easy dealing with cases like this because you're dealing with human beings whose lives are being impacted by planning decisions. And it's sometimes hard not to be swayed by the personal circumstances of the applicant. We need to be consistent as a planning committee and as a planning authority and as to how we deal with such applications. If we were to grant permission, it would send a message to people, look, you can get permission to convert something and then knock it down and rebuild it later. And that's not really what your policy advocates. If you look at your policy HOU 7, it is very clear in terms of saying, in terms of the assessment, one of the tests is the proposal involves a conversion of existing buildings without significant rebuilding. And that's quite a prominent word in that policy, without significant rebuilding. Here we are talking about an existing building that's no longer in place and will involve significant rebuilding. So if you were to depart from that policy, you would need to provide very clear justification for why you are doing so. Otherwise, applicants up and down our district will say, hang on a minute, you made a decision there in Scotto, why can't I do the similar here anywhere else in the district? So we need to be careful about what precedent this would set. Yes, each case has to be assessed on its own merits, but as a committee, if we start making certain decisions, it could set in train a pattern of activity across our district. And bear in mind, this is a new local plan recently adopted on the 17th of December. So we want to make sure we are starting off on the right foot in terms of an application of new policy. So yeah, it's not easy, this case, but obviously that's right before committee because it does involve a range of planning issues. We've given our particular view on this. We feel that the policy basis for this decision is one of refusal. But clearly as a committee, you could come to a different decision, but you need to articulate what the reasons are for departing from policy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, as it were, gatekeeper and default advocate for planning policy, it does concern me that there is a breach of our recently introduced planning policy here. And the test is always whether there are material considerations that outweigh the harm done by that breach. And I'm not sure that the benefit to the applicant as a private individual or family quite meets that test. I don't see what the public benefit is by allowing this to proceed. I suppose you could argue that it restores the built form in terms of its mass and scale to what it was originally before the works were commenced, but I think that is slightly, as it were, tenuous. The other aspect of a notice on page 56, recommendation 2, that there is the statement that the applicants failed to deal with nutrient neutrality issues, and as they are here and willing to answer questions, I would like you, Chair, to ask why they have put themselves in that position, and why, that has been added to this report as a major concern.
Thank you. A legal position on BNG. Order to comment.
Nutrient neutrality. Sorry, nutrient neutrality does need to be dealt with in terms of the context of an application. Otherwise, they would be in breach of the environmental regulations.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why we've got.
Sorry, Councillor. How does that then relate to the fact that the existing application, which now you obviously say has lapsed, goes back to 2012? Would that still require to meet nutrient neutrality today?
Oh, yes, yeah. So the previous application was submitted as a variation of condition, and that was because that was extant, that was not required. There's a variation of condition. So the reason for the nutrient neutrality in this case is because it's a new application with a new planning unit. And I appreciate the fact that, the building is still there or would have been there as a conversion and it didn't require it. But yeah, that's the reason why it's required in this instance and not previously. So.
Councillor Brand, if you want to follow on.
Yes, I presume that it's only sort of recently been realised that because complete demolition creates a new build policy requirement and it's caught by nutrient neutrality at that point. Presumably that's a recent state of affairs, and it's, as it were, caught the applicants on the hop a little bit, I'm assuming. But I just wondered what efforts we've made as a planning authority to try and resolve the nutrient neutrality situation, or whether there's in fact been a standoff between the applicant and the planning authority.
I do wonder whether were members to go against the officer recommendation, whether that could be dealt with under a condition.
We couldn't deal with the matter via condition. We would need to have the matter resolved prior to the grant of permission. Otherwise, we would be making a decision without having clarity about whether the proposal would have an adverse effect on a European site. So it could be relatively easy to resolve via purchase of a credit, because there are credits available in that catchment area. But we would need to understand how that's being resolved before we grant planning permission.
Thank you. Councillor Fredericks.
Thank you, Chair. I can't see any report from the enforcement team on this. So the applicant says that the enforcement team collected evidence and went to the barn and saw the barn. I have no evidence on this, so I propose I think that we need more evidence, because if our team have gone out there and they've seen the barn in disrepair and they've seen it falling down, surely we should have that information, because this is all very pertinent. So if it's a new build, if it's demolished on purpose, if it's demolished because it was falling down. So I think before I can make a decision, I would like to see a report from the planning enforcement team.
Is that a proposal for deferment? Thank you. Councillor Kim Toy.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Fredericks that for us to defer more investigation and more consultation between applicant and officers. I don't feel at this stage that I am happy with giving a decision on this. I do have one question, and I do apologise if it's quite obvious, but would this have been refused if it was applied for as demolition, materials reused and rebuild?
I'll answer the second part of your question first, and I'll sort of pick up on the first point. So had the applicant originally applied to effectively demolish what was there and put a replacement building on there, the policies, the old core strategy policies and the new local plan policies both would have advocated refusal. So that would have been the recommendation before you, because it would have been a breach of policy. Just turning to the second point about, and Councillor Fredericks' point about deferment, I think if that were the case, I think we need to understand what information you feel you would need as a committee in order to make a resolution. Because I do think you have enough here today to make a sound decision. The planning enforcement team, they go out and obviously investigate alleged breaches of planning control. They will establish whether there is a breach, and then they will refer that matter to the planning officers to take forward, either invite a planning application or say, no, we're not going to invite and take formal enforcement action. So the result of the enforcement investigation is this planning application, and all the information has been provided by the applicant that they put forward with the application. So I think you have everything you need before you today to make a decision. But if you do want to defer, I think we need clarity about exactly what information you do need.
Councillor Fredericks.
As I stated before, I would like to see the complete information from the planning enforcement team on their regular visits to site. I'm not prepared, and thank you for saying that you feel that there's information here. I feel as a member of this committee that there isn't the information that I require. So that is the reason for deferral. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson and Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the officer's recommendation, but based on the fact the nutrient neutrality issue is not resolved, if that was resolved, that would be different. So, but it's not possible to propose now, is it?
No, we're debating deferment.
Because we've got a deferral. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor MacDonald.
I feel the same as Councillor Patterson about nutrient neutrality, but I also have sympathy with what Councillor Fredericks is saying. What difference would it make if the report from the enforcement was that if it was deliberately demolished or whether it fell down? Because I don't. I'd like to know what the difference is to the decision on those two outcomes.
I mean, I haven't heard anyone saying there was a deliberate act to push the building over or act in a way that was negligent. I think it's a matter of fact and degree here, isn't it? The fact is the building is no longer there. That's the facts that we're faced with as a planning authority, and we have to decide: is this proposal to, in effect, provide a facsimile of what would have had planning permission? Is that acceptable in planning terms? That's the decision you have to make. If the applicant has allegedly acted in a way that's led to this result. That's not for this planning authority to get involved into that. It's that there are other means to resolve those issues. If there's a listed building issue in terms of affecting a building that's in the setting of another listed building, then those are other avenues that we would go down to pursue those points. But the key here is it okay in policy terms? And we're saying, no, it isn't.
Yes, come back, Mr. Fredericks.
This committee is sat because this is a contentious application. This committee contains members of this council, and we are elected members of this council. And by deferring this, we want to see more evidence, and we want to see the reports from the planning enforcement team that recognises if this building was falling down or it wasn't falling down. So this is pertinent to the application. And as I say, we are a member-led council.
Thank you. I think it'd also give an opportunity, should the members wish to go that way, to deal with the nutrient neutrality issue. No, sorry, it's the committee. Okay. I have a proposal from Councillor Frederick, seconded by Councillor Kim Toy, to defer so that further information can be provided as requested by Councillor Fredericks. Can we take a vote, please?
Sorry, who was the seconder?
Councillor Kim Toy.
Councillor Kim Toy.
Yes, Councillor Patterson.
Before we vote, can we add to that further information also that nutrient neutrality is resolved, or a proposal is put forward?
Except the nutrient neutrality issue should be resolved as part of the deferral.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So the proposal is one for deferral to enable the committee to receive more evidence and reports from the planning enforcement team, and also to resolve nutrient neutrality matters before it comes back to committee. Okay. Councillor Beattie?
For.
Councillor Brown?
Abstain.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett?
Against.
Councillor Fredericks?
For deferment.
For deferral. Councillor Hankins? Councillor Heinrich?
For.
Councillor Holliday? Councillor MacDonald?
For.
Councillor Neverway? Councillor Patterson?
For.
Councillor John Toy?
Against.
And Councillor Kim Toy?
For.
So that is 9 votes for deferral, 2 votes against, and 1 abstention. The vote for deferral is carried.
Right, the application is therefore deferred to enable further information to be brought to the committee at a later date, and for the nutrient neutrality issues to be resolved if possible. Thank you. Right, we'll take one more item, then we'll take a break. So if we can now move to agenda item 9. Gray, if you'd like to go and present. When you're ready.
Good morning, members. Thank you very much. As the chair just said, this is for application PF 252736, that's the one, for the land north of Reedlands on Horsefen Road in Ludham. Before we begin, there is one point I'd like to make and change to it. You will have noticed within the report that one of the refusal reasons was for lack of arboriculture information. That has been received, so that will be removed from one of the refusal reasons. But I want to address that first. Brilliant. As you'll see here, this is the site plan on the left, showing the proposed dwellings location within the field. And then again, another site plan photo just showing it again This is a aerial photo just to give a bit more context as to where the entire field is located itself. As you'll see from the photo, there's the boatyard to the south, Womack's stave over to the northwest, and top left of the aerial view, you will see the Yarmouth Road. This slide here will illustrate some of the constraints with the site. So as you'll see again, the field illustrated by the red box, and top left there, the grey is the settlement boundary for Ludham. The site is approximately 650 metres away from the site, the settlement boundary, or approximately 830 metres when travelling down Horsefen Road. The right-hand slide there you'll see is the Ludham Conservation Area and the Broads National Park in pink. Members will note that from slide 2 that the dwelling itself is located within the left-hand side of that box for the field, close to Horsefen Road itself. This slide shows the development site in relation to flood zones 2 and 3, with the darker blue being flood zone 3. It must be noted that the dwelling itself would be located outside of the flood risk zone. But as you will see, Horsefen Road in its entirety is within flood zone 2 and 3. We then move on to the plans for the application. So as you'll see here, this is the floor plans and roof plan for the dwelling. As you'll see, the ground floor on the left, middle is the first floor, and then the roof plan. This is the proposed front elevation, as you can see illustrated by the map on the top right, just to give a bit more context as to where we're looking. This is then the rear elevation of the proposal. And then this is a section of the rear elevation, removing that rear projection and showing the dormer windows on the sort of principal ridge line and roof slope above the flat roof extension. This is then the north side of the elevation. And this is the south elevation again, but again, this is another section showing the dormer windows in a bit more detail. This is the south side elevation, again illustrated by the map, which hopefully is just about visible for you there. We now move on to some site photos. Again, as you'll notice, the map in the top right corner illustrating where the photos were taken from, just to give you a bit of context. So that's looking from sort of further south down on Horsefen Road, looking up towards the site. This photo is looking from sort of the north of Horsefen Road, looking down towards the proposed entrance. This is a panoramic of the site, so there obviously might be some slight distortion on it, but you'll obviously notice the dwelling, which is Reedlands on the right hand side, and obviously then the expanse of the field there. Taking this photo just to try and illustrate the visibility displays, looking from the proposed access down, down Horsefen Road to the south. And this next photo would be looking north up towards where you would exit Horsefen Road. And again, the next few slides are just sort of some photos I've taken from within the site, just to give a bit of context to the field. I mean, it's not much to show. It's currently a field, so but hopefully that helps. The key considerations for you members are in detail on page 73, but in summary, it is for the principle of development. Council can demonstrate a 7-year land supply and can demonstrate that we're meeting our statutory obligation for delivering self-built plots. So whilst one dwelling would contribute, the weight wouldn't be significant enough to outweigh the policy conflicts with it being in an unsustainable location. The next one would be for design and appearance, including the heritage asset and landscape. Obviously, it's been detailed within the report that It would harm the significance of the adjacent conservation area and the Broads National Park. I keep going on this. Sorry. Obviously, amenity one to consider, although there wasn't any concerns raised in relation to residential amenity. Highway safety. It was concluded by the Highways Authority that and agreed with by the council itself that Horsefen Road is considered unsuitable to sustain the increased flow of traffic resulting from the proposal, and for flood risk as well. The proposal would fail exceptions test, as it would not provide wider sustainability benefits to the community that would outweigh the flood risk. And again, the trees refusal reason has been removed. And obviously, again, that was going over what I've just said for the refusal reasons.
Okay, thank you. We have no parish speaker, no objecting speaker, one supporting speaker, Tony Doyle. Come to the microphone, please. Just a reminder, you have 3 minutes, and Democratic Services are timing it. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I just,
yeah, your slide will be shown.
they'll just be continuing. Okay, thank you. Can't see that, but that's for your benefit. Oh, right, there we go. Thank you. Right. Shall I start? Yes. Hello. Well, good morning, Chair and members of the committee. This application is for a single self-building dwelling secured by legal agreement and not speculative scheme. The proposal has been reduced, refined in response to feedback, with any identified impacts limited and capable of mitigation. While district-wide self-build figures may now be met, there remains an unmet local need in London, and the proposal would directly address that gap. The applicant is Mr. Carl Smart, his wife and their 5 children. Mr. Smart grew up in London. His partner has lived in London for the last 35 years. The grandparents run the King's Arms for the last 40 years and help look after and support the family to care for their children. 2 of them have severe autism. Their current home is far from ideal for their needs in terms of indoor accommodation and outdoor space. This is not a speculative developer-led scheme which could lead to more. It's intended to meet an identified local need. The alternative is to break the family supporting bonds, making life significantly harder. The proposal has strong local support. From a design, landscape and heritage perspective, it is accepted that the site is in a sensitive location, close to the London Conservation Area and within the setting of the Broads. The proposal before you here today is not the original scheme. During determination, it has been materially revised. We have listened and responded. Importantly, conservation and design acknowledge that any heritage impact would fall at the lower end, i.e. less than substantial harm. National policy is clear that this does not automatically justify refusals. Concerns about landscape, dark skies and domestic activity are matters that can be controlled through planning conditions. From a planning balance perspective, national legislation places a duty on councils to meet demand for self-build and custom-built housing. This duty is ongoing regardless of whether the LPA is technically meeting its needs or not. What matters here is where self-build opportunities are actually being delivered. There are no available consented self-build plots within London or its service village catchment. This proposal would therefore meet a clear and specific and life-changing local need. This is a material consideration which attracts planning weight. From a highways perspective, the Highway Authority commented that two-way vehicle movement is not possible, which is clearly not the case. I mean, the photographs are just there to provide that. In any case, we are providing 2 passing places which significantly outweigh the impact of a single home. In conclusion, when weighted in balance, the benefits of meeting the local need alongside a well-designed and carefully controlled scheme justify approval. And I hope and I invite members to support this application. Thank you, and we're here, the applicant is behind, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Local members, councillor Varley is unable to be present, but has supplied a written statement.
Okay, so this is the submission from councillor Adam Varley. He says, please accept my apologies for not being here in person this morning. I have brought this application before committee today as I feel that further scrutiny is warranted. He says this self-build application is ambitious and under our new locally adopted local plan, policy HOU2 paragraph 7.2.13 refers to the requirement of sites for self-build development, adding to the mix of housing across the district. Furthermore, as stated within the National Planning Policy Framework, it refers to section 1 of the Self-Build and Custom Building House Building Act. This states that councils give enough suitable development permissions to meet the identified demand. This application clearly suggests that there is a demand for such buildings in Ludham Parish, as this is the second self-build application to come forward within the past 2 years. It goes on to say, although this site is just outside of the development zone and stated as countryside under policy SS1, this is considered a somewhat densely populated residential area within the village by locals. Horsefen Road has dwellings of varying design, and this application would go towards adding to the unique mix. He concludes, I believe the applicant has brought something forward which is unique and ambitious in design and merit, and has worked hard to address the points by the planning team. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. I heard the applicant say less than substantial harm. Sounds like a low bar to me. I think the light spill doesn't look right. It looks like it's a house in the middle of a field to me, and I think the red line might actually show thought of what happens in reality. But I would like to propose the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Hankins.
Thank you, Chair. I refer to page 73. It is considered that the proposed development would be positioned within an unsustainable location with a basic lack of day-to-day facilities. That probably represents 95% of what's happening in North Norfolk. I take issue with that. I mean, in order to grow the housing population in North Norfolk, some of that has to be taken into account. I think the other thing is the applicant said that this family would introduce 5 children into this area. Here again, we have a situation where, in my experience in the rural areas, the one thing that they are short of is children. It's an older population. We've just been circulated with the details of the age topography in North Norfolk. So I think I'm asking the question, has the right weight been given to that consideration? Thank you.
I mean, that's the starting point clearly is your local plan. Local plan adopted only in December last year, as I said in the previous case. That clearly sets out a hierarchy of development across the district. So you've got your larger towns and villages, and then it obviously goes down to your smaller villages. Everywhere else has to be designated as something. It's designated as countryside. So in that countryside area, there's a general presumption against development unless it meets certain policy tests, and that policy test is policy SS2. So the report is correct in saying that it's in the countryside location, and by the fact of being in the countryside location, there will be longer journey times because you're having to travel further to get to those higher order settlements to do your day-to-day activities. In terms of the remark about there's children potentially living in the building, well, that may be the case for this applicant, but we can't guarantee that as a planning authority going forward. The applicant could decide to build the house and then in a number of years' time move out and sell it to someone else who may not have any children. So you can't, as a planning authority, give weight to that particular issue because you can't guarantee that will be happening going forward. So you just need to be careful in terms of affording weight to matters that can't be considered material planning considerations. So I'd advise against giving weight to that particular point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a former member of the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, I would object to this purely on the reason number 5, because it's in a flood zone. All right, it's a dry island, but we all know what that road is like. And I'm more than happy to second the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just reading the report, it's seldom that we get almost a full slate of consultees objecting to a proposal. And we need to be cognizant of the role of the planning authority at the Broads Authority, who don't seem to be in favour of this application either. It's clearly deep into SS1, some distance from both the village settlement boundary and the conservation boundary. And I think that the officer's recommendation is probably appropriate in this instance, so I will be supporting that recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Nobody else has anything to add. We can move to the vote. The recommendation is for refusal as set out in your papers, proposed by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Beattie?
For.
Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett?
For.
Councillor Fredericks? Councillor Hankins? Councillor Heinrich?
For.
Councillor Holiday?
For.
Councillor MacDonald?
For.
Councillor Neville?
For.
Councillor Patterson?
For.
Councillor John Toy?
For.
And Councillor Kim Toy?
For.
That is 9 votes for, 1 against. The vote is carried.
Thank you. The application is refused. Okay, we'll take a 15-minute break now, and we'll come back at after 5 past, if we can, please. Thank you.
Where to refuse it to go into the thing. Yeah.
You have that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back in session now. We move to item 10, High Kelling, which is a permission in principle, which we don't get very often, PP/26/0186. So Luckhurst.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, councillors. So yes, this is an application, planning in principle for up to 9 dwellings. Just to give some background about the application type, permission in principle is a 2-stage plan and application process, which separates the principle of development from its technical details. So the scope of matters which can be considered under a permission in principle application is limited to the following. So location of the site, the type of land use proposed, and the amount of development. Issues relating to these in principle matters will be considered at this stage, and then if approved, all other matters would be considered at a 2nd stage process, which is named the technical details stage. So if we look now at the application, this is the site outlined in red, as you can see here, and an aerial view shown to the right-hand side. This is the indicative site layout plan the applicant has provided. So as you can see, 9 dwellings positioned off of Heathfield Road. This slide just shows the context. So the application is located within the countryside. However, it is directly adjacent at the settlement boundary for High Kelling, which is classified as a small growth village within the local plan. Some photos of the site. So it is, the site was previously used for grazing and it hasn't been used for anything else since. So it's very overgrown. So some of the photos of the site are slightly limited, but this is looking at the site from Heathfield Road. And some further photos looking east into the site. Again, as you can see, this would be the surroundings of it. So it's very overgrown. There's not very many views into the site available at the moment. And the entrance to the site from Avenue Road. So this is looking down with the arrow pointing into the access to the site here. So these are the key considerations that we're looking at today: the principle of development, location, use, and amount of development. My report has touched on affordable housing. However, as the report confirms, that will be considered at technical detail stage if approval is given. The application site is considered to be capable of accommodating the 9 dwellings, and there are no significant factors suggesting that the application should be determined otherwise, and therefore we have recommended the proposal for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of speakers. We'll start with the Parish Council speaker, Councillor Peter Rutherford. Come to the microphone, please. Reminder, you have 3 minutes, which is timed.
Yes, good morning. I don't intend to repeat the representations made by the Parish Council that were summarised on page 75, but I do wish to draw the attention to 2 issues at this stage, and that is really regarding the suitability of the site for residential development. It's my understanding that in the past, no further development has been permitted on this side of the A148 because of access onto the A148, which is dangerous. Particularly at the entrance to Avenue Road, which is the proposed exit point onto the public highway system for this development. So in my opinion, and in the opinion of the Parish Council, the policy previously that no additional development should apply and that this site is not suitable for residential development. I would remind you that in 2020, an application was made for 1 dwelling in Avenue Road. The County Council Highways Department said that the proposal would lead to an intensification in the use and access onto A148, which is a principal route and would cause undue interference with a safe and free flow of traffic, and that there's an inadequate visibility displays which can't be remedied by planning conditions because of private ownership and the prevalence of trees at that junction. The officer from the County Council who made the representations in 2020 pointed out that visibility to the west is approximately 24 metres with a greater distance to the east of approximately 40 metres, which would only provide 34% and 50% of the required distances respectively. So it's impossible to gain safe access onto the A148 for any additional housing. The other point that I would want to make would be that the access from the development onto Heathfield Road, where that road goes then onto Avenue Road, two-way vehicle passing is not possible at that junction. It's very narrow, and therefore I do not see that this site is suitable at all for residential development for the reasons that I've stated. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no objecting speaker. The applicant or agent is unable to attend, and a statement was provided and circulated to the committee last Tuesday. So we move straight to the local member. Councillor Rose is not able to be present. Councillor Beattie, do you wish to speak or not? Thank you. Okay, to debate then. Councillor John Toy, then Councillor Patterson.
I just have a question. It's a small growth village. Does it have any allocated sites? Sorry, it only occurred to me when we were doing it there. I didn't have a chance to look.
No, so there's no allocated sites, but there is a number of dwellings that are available to that area. So there's a restriction of how many. I think in this case, High Kelling has 20.
Okay.
So no more than that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Has there been any dialogue about perhaps using Warren / Bridge Road for ingress and access?
There hasn't been any discussion regarding that. The only thing we have is the proposal in front of us with the access off Heathfield Lane, I think it was. And as the highway comments confirm, details of other possible access, visibilities, design, location, etc. would need to be discussed at a technical detail stage.
What's our main consideration at this point then? Whether it, because highways haven't, they've commented, but yeah.
I mean, the permission in principle as an application type is quite hard to get your head around sometimes, because in effect you're being limited in terms of what you can consider, but some of those limitations that might come at a technical details consent might in some ways influence whether you grant permission at permission in principle stage. But sorry, do you want to go back to the slide of what we can and can't consider? Well, it's clear my throat. So we are limited in terms of what we as a committee can take into account. So really we're trying to establish, is the principle of up to 9 dwellings and a land use type of residential, is that land use type acceptable in this location? And as the site is immediately adjacent to the boundary of a small growth village, then the policy would permit, if a planning application came in, the policy would say, in principle, development is acceptable here. So the policy would support this, but I take the point that there may be matters that come at technical details consent stage that might actually prevent the grant of a technical details consent, but those can't influence whether you grant permission in principle today, if that makes it any clearer. It's not an easy concept, but
thank you, Jeff. That does make it really clear. So based on that, do I think the location and the amount of development is correct? So I do. So I agree with the officer's recommendation, but like you say, you can see further down the line issues that perhaps can't be overcome, or so I think that probably clear where I am. And if you want a proposal, I'm happy to give a proposal.
Before I move to the next member, just a question. If this is for 9, under the incoming regulations, that would then presumably be an officer decision on the technical details stage. It would not come back to committee.
under the new scheme of delegation, yes, as my understanding, it would be a delegated matter because it's a minor application.
Okay, thank you. Right, I've got a long list here now. So Councillor Netherway next. Okay, Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Yeah, looking at it, I don't have a problem with it in principle, so I'm happy. Did you propose? Yes, all right.
Double act, sorry.
We are a bit today, aren't we? So I'm happy to second that one
Okay.
in principle, and
Okay, thank
I
you.
hope officers, when it comes back to them, will make a sensible decision.
Councillor Holiday.
I'm sorry, but in print, I can't get the highways out of my mind, I'm afraid. The location of the site is not, I can't divorce it from the highways access. And having been up and down that little road many times, when I was a GP, I would find the access difficult actually. So I don't think you can, you know, that how can you establish 9 houses without thinking how people are going to get there? So I rather disagree with your analysis, but I may be wrong, of course. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, so permissions in principle are, I think, a new device. It's like an outline application light, as it were, because you know, the government's drive is to fast track things, and this is one way of dealing with it. I'm slightly perturbed that we will be denied as a committee if this is returned later when we have the new national scheme of delegation system coming in. And I want to make it absolutely clear, because there is concern. I have actually received direct contact from people in the vicinity. I'm quite familiar with the sites and the area, about, you know, access arrangements, both pedestrian and vehicular, and the image that was shown of the photograph of the avenue meeting the A148 is a particularly relevant image because it is the location of a fatal accident in December 2024, when a couple crossing that road late at night were both killed in an accident. And in fact, this stretch of road is at the moment subject to a review and potential reductions in speed limits. It's with the Highway Authority, and we've had meetings about it. And I know that I shouldn't really be dwelling on this because it's not part of the permission in principle at this stage, but it is, I agree with Councillor Holiday, it's extremely difficult, this, to divorce the two. And what I would say is that whatever we decide today, if we do decide to approve it, it should in no way be an indication to the applicant that when it comes back for technical details to be decided, that it will be approved. This is definitely, you know, a Champions League semi-final matter, first leg. The second leg will determine the result, and that is yet to be played.
Thank you. Councillor Fredericks.
Thank you. I'd like to propose approval for this on the basis that we are doing the first decision, and the second decision I would like to come back to committee because I want to make sure that we do get those affordable homes.
It has already been proposed by Councillor Patton, seconded by Councillor Fitch-Tillett. Whether it comes back, it could be one of those grey areas which requires the judging panel to make a decision on it, depending on how this all works out with the new regulations. That we can.
So that
we're dealing with that as a final issue today.
Recommendation, because I want those affordable homes.
No, there's no, hopefully there will be affordables in there. I don't think there's any requirement with only 9, but I'm not sure how that will all work out. We are subject to a changing world, which at the whim of the Housing Secretary. So I think that you will. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Kim Toy. Sorry, I'm not forgetting you.
Right. Firstly, in principle, because I'm trying to get my blinkered head on, so I'm not thinking about highways or anything like that. We're just, can we put 9 houses there? And I say yes. But I'd like to know, if you go down Bridge Road and you take the second turning right, is that a private road? I think I accidentally went down that track once and I ended up somewhere, but that is a better route onto where the site is. But I don't know, it's not a named road, so I don't know if it belongs to a company.
Warren Road.
Sorry?
That's Warren
This one
Road.
here.
Yeah, that's Warren Road.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Warren Road. Can they not go on to Warren Road? So, oh, okay.
But importantly, goes probably to driver. Obstruction, traffic, water. Again, still issues with
I'll stop you there because
Okay.
we're wandering into areas that are not for consideration under permission in principle.
Right, well, I'll leave it there. But yes, I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Anything new, we'll then go to the vote. The recommendation is for approval of permission in principle.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Beatty,
Traffic concerns.
Councillor Brown,
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett,
For.
Councillor Fredericks,
For.
Councillor Hankins,
For.
Councillor Heinrich,
For.
Councillor Holiday, Councillor MacDonald,
Against.
Councillor Neverway, Councillor Luke Patterson,
For.
Councillor John Toy,
For.
and Councillor Kim Toy.
For.
So that is majority for.
Okay, permission in principle is approved. Thank you. That gets us through all the applications for today. We'll now move to item 11, which is how we deal with the government's planning committee reform requirements. Are you taking this there or? Okay. Having some technical issues. Okay. Right, so if you go on to the next slide. Okay, so agenda item 11 is really talking about changes that are afoot in terms of development committee, in terms of the way we make decisions and the number of members on committee. So as I set out on page 83, there's a government consultation that came out at the end of March, fairly short consultation period, but it follows a consultation they did last year. And I think this committee did have a discussion on those sort of proposals that were coming out from government at that stage in terms of a scheme of delegation and others. I mean, I think we did make representations to government on that first round of consultation. So I think the government have made clear that they want to see some kind of planning reform. I think there's been lots of councils up and down the country where committees have overturned officer approvals, and I think that's what's been driving the government's sort of concerns about there's too many applications getting refused by development committee. I think we do book the trend here in North Norfolk because it tends to be officer recommendation of a refusal being overturned to approval. So we're kind of the opposite end of the spectrum from a government perspective. As I set out in the report, we do delegate about 97% of our applications to officers, and those that do come to committee more get approved than they get refused. So I think we're, as a context, we are sort of booking the trend. But anyway, the government have set out their aims, and I've included Appendix A, a copy of the draft regulations that government issued as part of their consultation. So it's known as the Town and Country Planning Discharge of Local Planning Authority Functions Regulations 2026, and it just trips off the tongue, doesn't it? But so this is in draft form, but it sets out a lot of what we're going to discuss now. So firstly, in terms of the size and composition of committees, so the government have said
that they would like to see a maximum, and that is a maximum of 13 members on a development committee. So there's 14 on our committees, and so that would obviously mean a reduction in numbers. Obviously, although planning decisions aren't made along political grounds, there is obviously a need to think about political balance in any sort of changes that are made to a committee function. So if you just go on to some of the next slides on. So and I've included that in the actual report itself. So just looking at what we have and what options there may be in terms of revising any committee number, because we're not mandated to go to the maximum 13. We can go to any number that as a full council sees fit to have on its planning committee. As I'm going to come on to later in this discussion, the number of items that will be coming to committee in the future will be significantly reduced as a result of the National Scheme of Delegation. So we're looking at our recommendation to you, and whether you accept it or not is a matter for you, is that we look at a committee formed of 11 members, and that will then require 6 members to be quorate. If you go on to the next slide. So Emma Denny helpfully, and I've just added a few little bits, Emma Denny helpfully sort of included or provided some information about on the current breakdown of political balance, what that would mean. So currently for a committee of 14, we've got 9 Lib Dem members, 4 Conservative and 1 Independent. If we were to go down to the minimum, or so the maximum that government say of 13, that would break down to 8 Lib Dem members, 4 Conservative and 1 Independent. The advice we're suggesting, or the recommendation we're giving, is to go to 11 members, which would be 7 Lib Dem, 3 Conservative and 1 Independent. So whilst it's ultimately a matter for full council, and there is an AGM on the 20th of May where these sort of issues are set out for the year ahead, the recommendation at para 2.6 is that the Development Committee note the contents and indicate a preference to be taken to full council on the size of a development committee that you think would be appropriate to deal with the business that we have as committees. So I'm happy to stop there, or do you want me to carry on? Do members wish to sort of go through that aspect first before we move on to the next part? Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any particular reason why you didn't put a development committee of 12 up in front of us? We've got 14, 13, and then we skipped to 11, which is what you're proposing. Any particular reason we didn't look at 12?
Yeah, as I indicated in the report, that when you have an even number of members and you're making a decision, if for example it's 6v6, it then relies on a chairman's casting vote to make that call. So actually, and that puts pressure on a chairman. It's so it's about how can we reduce the likelihood of needing a casting vote. So that's the other.
Yeah, okay, I understand that now, just to relieve pressure off the chairman, because I would have said go for that, but to avoid the pressure on the chairman, I understand. Thank you.
Councillor Holiday, then Councillor Kim Toy.
Why 11 and not 13? Is that to reduce pressure on the chairman as well?
Well, I mean, the reason for looking at numbers is, as we'll come on to in a minute, is the number of items of business that the committee will have to consider will be significantly reduced as a result of the National Scheme of Delegation. So it's 13 will be quite a large number of members to have to meet at probably an infrequent occurrence. It may not be every month. It may be we have periods where there are no development committees, depending on the flow of applications coming in the council. So, I mean, ultimately, it's not for me to dictate. It's a decision for full council ultimately, but we need to come up with a suggested number that we can take forward as a recommendation from this committee. If you feel it should be a different number, 13, then that's obviously your call as a committee. I'm just trying to sort of make a suggestion as a starting point for discussion.
Yeah, it may be useful if we hold some of these thoughts till we've seen how the application will be dealt with in future, to get a better idea of what will come to committee and therefore the workload. But we'll just carry on with this debate briefly. I'll take 2 more people. So, yeah, briefly then, please.
will the composition of applications that need to be seen in that committee be different from the national because of our protected landscape, our heritage and things like that? We're going to have listed building consents and that sort of thing. This will come back. Preservations. Will the composition be different from the national and therefore we'll be seeing more?
I think that will all be explained shortly, so we can just hold fire on that for a moment, Councillor. Just take briefly here, Councillor Kim Toyne and Councillor Hankins.
Quick question. Why 13? How's that number been popped its head up? Just wondering, that's all. Why is it not 6, 7?
It was
Why
the intern
13?
in the office, I think, at the time.
Sorry?
Probably the intern in the office at the time.
Just wondered, that's all. And if you don't have a quick answer.
I do have an answer.
Shut up and retreat.
The Planning Advisory Service did do some work on this, and there is a guidance document they put together on sort of a best practice sort of development committee. So I think it stemmed from work that they did. I believe the government were talking about 11 in the previous consultation last year. So whether they've heard or listened to a reaction from that consultation and thought, oh, we best put it up a little bit and we'll go to 13. I can't answer for what government do in terms of their decision making, but I know it stemmed from PAS work and obviously a reaction to the first round of consultations.
Right, Councillor Hankins, then we'll move on to explore the rationale of what will come to committee, what will definitely not come to committee, and the grey area in the middle, because that will then inform, I think, a further debate on the potential number that we can make an indication to Cabinet and full council as to what would be appropriate. Councillor Hankins, very quickly.
Chair, that's what I want to understand, quite frankly. So as we move on, you know, what's going to come to the committee, why, and what's not going to come to committee.
Okay, you want to go through the delegation?
So the next bit of okay, I'll start again. So the regulations specify two things. So a list of applications that will always be delegated to officers, and I've included a list at para 3.6 of the types of applications that would always be delegated to officers. And then there's a second list in Schedule 2 of those regulations that basically provide a list of applications that should always be delegated to officers, but might come to committee if certain criteria are met that trigger a requirement for it to come to committee. And this is where the sort of complicated bit comes in, because there is in effect a gatekeeper function required by the council. So, and that would most likely fall to the chair of committee and David as assistant director and probably myself as development manager to establish which of those applications falling in Schedule 2 should or should not go to development committee. So the government have indicated it has to have it has to raise certain issues, and I've listed there 2 bullet points. So one or more issues of economic, social or environmental significance to the local area, or one or more significant planning matters being raised having regard to the development plan and any other material considerations. So it might be that the proposal is creating a significant number of jobs or is having a significant impact on the environment, or there's other sort of social impacts that might justify that coming to committee. Or you might have a scheme that's a significant departure from the development plan. So you have an allocated site, but what's come in is completely different to what was expected in the development plan. Those are the sort of things that might end up coming to committee. But what we have to do is we have to rewrite our constitution and write into that constitution a gateway function for the council. So in effect, a set of rules that say, if this type of application comes in, we will look at this, that and the other. And to make it so that there's less arbitrary decision making, there's more of a formal process to go through to work out whether something should come to committee or not. clearly the last thing the government want to do is add more committee cases coming. That's clearly their intention. They want to reduce the committee workload, but it's finding that balance because, as Councillor Holloway said, there's plenty of listed buildings. There's lots of trees that we want to protect and other sort of important matters that we want to make sure we're getting the planning decisions right. Obviously, there's a lot of trust that will be placed on officers to make those correct delegated decisions, and it's about how we identify those sorts of cases that could or should go to committee. So we'll have to fundamentally change how we consult you. So at the minute we send you a weekly list, but under this change, we'd have to say which ones fall in Schedule 1. So which ones we've got in, but you can't call to committee, and which ones might be possible to call into committee if they raise issues that are set out on the screen before you. So yeah, there's still a lot of work to do, but the government has said they want these regulations to come into play on the 30th of September this year. So when you work through the cycles of getting to Constitution, Working Party and full council, it doesn't leave us a huge amount of time to do this. But that's why I wanted to bring it early so we can have this discussion and go forward from there.
Yeah, if you could just give us an example. We've had 4 items today. Would they all fall under the total delegation? I can see 1 is questionable, but 3 would appear to be directly officer decisions and would no way come to committee under the new rules.
I think if you applied the regulations, I think we wouldn't be meeting today because none of those cases would come before this development committee. So that's the stark reality. And
from the previous meeting, Overstrand Road would have come to committee automatically. But possibly none of the others on that.
Yeah. So I've set out on paragraph 3.8 on page 86 just a look back to 2025, and there were 12 development committee meetings, and we determined 53 applications, which is about 4.4 applications per meeting. So 77% of those decisions were non-major and 12 were major. So the 12 majors probably would likely come to committee. I'm not saying all of them would, but they probably would come to committee. And only 7 of the 12 meetings we had in 2025 had a major application on them. So that means we probably wouldn't have held 5 of those 12 meetings that we held last year. So that does have a significant implication for your workload as members. And that's why the suggestion to reduce the number of members on committee down to 13 to reflect that reduced workload. Now, clearly those applications that come to committee are likely to be very significant and very contentious, otherwise they wouldn't have passed the gateway test to get there. So the idea is really to have only those applications that really need member input, that are really significant, have a significant impact on the direction of the local plan or policy implications that should come to committee. And that's going to be quite a change for all of us to get our heads around, including our officers, because yeah, there's going to be pressure on officers to make sure that we get those decisions right. And obviously we issue a lot of our decisions on the delegated powers, but those ones that perhaps would have come to committee in the past, we probably will get lots of representations, but that won't, having 100 representations doesn't automatically mean it goes to committee. It's that issue's taken away.
Leaving aside, it's anti-democratic, but that's the national government decision and we're stuck with it. Councillor Brown and Councillor Netherway.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, obviously these regulations are aimed at more underperforming planning authorities than we are here at North Norfolk District Council. We only refer, 3% of our applications to committee. So, you know, we're the good cops when it comes to dealing with matters at committee. And did I not mention earlier that we were a Platinum Award winner?
Many times, Councillor.
I don't know if I did. My memory's not what it used to be, but I will mention it anyway. I thank Officer Lyon for his report here. It's very well set out. But I think I'm going to have to refer clause 3.3 to the video assistant referee, because I noticed that clause 3.3 refers to the gateway keepers, as it were, as the chair, vice chair, assistant director of planning, and the development manager, but doesn't mention the portfolio holder. And I would venture to suggest that that is going to be a wrong turn if we stick to this this cast in the play that's about to be rolled out before us. And just going back to the previous item briefly, is there any risk of increased inquiracy if we go down to 11 as opposed to 13? You know, if you're reducing numbers, logic would say that you're increasing the possibility of people not being available, having a greater impact on the constitution of the committee.
I don't think we've ever actually been in quorum. We've been close to it once in the last 3
We
years.
might be even closer if we go down to 11 from 14.
Potentially, but you know, other committees have been very close recently. I think of ONS at times. Well, we're obviously a more exciting committee to be on. But yeah.
There's a waiting list apparently, Mr. Chairman. It's so well run, this committee, if I might, you know, be so bold as to suggest.
You may, though I do wonder what we have so much trouble getting substitutes sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, if we look back to page 84 on the table in terms of the number of people to make the application quorate, at the minute we're 14 and we need 7 members to make it quorate. So actually a reduction of 3 members on the committee. There's only one different, there'll be 6 to make it quorate. So the actual change is not that great, just 1 member less to make it quorate.
De minimis is what I think you're saying, aren't you?
Something along those lines.
Non-curate lex, I think.
Councillor Fredericks. Pardon? Oh, yes, sorry, Peter. I was writing his down.
Thank you, Chair. The second time today, my question's been asked for me, but I do bow to Councillor Brown, who's put the question far more eloquently than I ever could have done.
So these are recommendations and that we vote on them yay or nay, don't we? So it's not saying that it's not giving the consequence if we object to them.
No, I think all we're doing today is indicating to officers, and Cara will have a view on this, of course, and to Cabinet knows that what will come forward to full council for the AGM. You know, we're not decision making on this. We are indicating a potential route. No, it's what we indicate now is simply advisory. You know, it's up to others to come back and say, no, you've got it all wrong, and this is a better route.
Yeah, I mean, the recommendations on page 87, it's point 1 that's the one that's of the greatest significance, because I've asked if the committee can indicate a preference that can be taken to the full council AGM on the 20th of May, because although it's not determinative, it would influence the final decision of the full council if full council know the view of development committee on the number of members it thinks could be on that committee. So it's really just an indication for full council to help steer, because you'll have to make a decision on the 20th of May, and it just might be helpful to have that steer.
Yes, Councillor Holiday.
Sorry, John, I beat you to it. I'm proposing we go for 13. It's mine, if we're doing it formally.
Well, and I was going to go for the 11 and make sure that we had, but make sure that we had plenty of reserves trained, because we've now got more people available. So that was kind of my thoughts on that. So we're still in debate then, really, aren't we? So,
We are indicating, so I think the simple way around this at the moment is a straightforward show of hands for 13 and a show of hands for 11. We'll see where we sit after that. So you raise your hand if you prefer 13. 9 and 11. Okay, I think that's fairly clear. The preference is for 13. That could be taken forward. Lauren, to be noted.
And just on the latter point that Councillor Brown made about the gatekeeper function, and we can certainly add you to the gatekeeper function.
I think that's essential.
You're so kind. Thank you very much.
I was thinking of your workload, but
for ad-libbing me. I mean, do I have to sit any examination or anything to qualify?
there is a written test, but we'll talk about
There's a
that.
written test, okay. Yeah.
Please ensure he signs for the key.
Yeah, you'll require full subbuff for it.
Yeah, no doubt have my mental capacity tested as well as part of that.
Okay. Have we got anything else to add? Could you just, before we just bring us in a conclusion, could you just indicate, please, Jeff, as to that grey area in the middle, as to what sort of things would come to the gatekeeper committee, or working party, or whatever we wish to call it in the end?
Yeah, so if you look on, it's not easy to read this. And never easy to read these government regulations, but if you look on page 94 of the agenda, it's called Schedule 2, and those are the applications that may be determined by a committee or an officer. So if it's one of these types, then these are the things that would come to the gatekeeper function to have to decide whether it should go to committee or not. Now, clearly, with 2,000 listed buildings in the district, I don't think we'd want every listed building application to come to committee. Otherwise, well, you've been meeting every week or every day just to get through the agenda. And likewise for tree preservation orders, you might not want to have every TPO come to this authority. So it's about finding where's the balance, and that's where the gatekeeper function comes in. Advert applications. I mean, you might not want, you don't get that many advert applications, but that's probably sort of a function that could come to officers to be determined, except where it raises significant amenity or highway concerns. But if it did that, most likely we'd be recommending refusal anyway. So it's kind of working back from that. So, I mean, we did revise the constitution last year and updated it in March this year. So I'm thinking about how we can use some of what we've already got in terms of, can we have a system where local ward member could indicate that they think this is an application that's in Schedule 2 and should be considered by development committee, and that can then go towards that gatekeeper function to say, this has been raised by the local ward member. Do we agree or not agree that this should come before development committee? And then that's, because otherwise, how would we know that there's a local issue or an issue of local concern? We need to enable you as local ward councillors to feed into that process. Otherwise, it just feeds into that feeling that it's anti-democratic or not allowing people to express an opinion. So those are early thoughts, but obviously anything that's suggested in the constitution change would have to come to Constitution Working Party and full council to be signed off. So you do get the final say as to what's in that constitution.
Well, presumably we'll get more guidance from government.
I wouldn't bank on it.
We live in hope. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Presumably, we will still get the weekly list of planning applications.
Yes, we will do, but we'll need, as I said earlier, we'll need to separate those that can't be called to committee and those that could be called to committee.
Right.
So Otherwise you'll end up writing saying, can I send this one to committee? And it's, no, we can't. It's an automatic delegation. So,
Normally we look it up online, find out who
Yeah.
the officer is and have a quick chat, don't we?
yeah. So there's some work to do in terms of how logistically we capture whether it's in Schedule 1 or Schedule 2. But we can do that behind the scenes. It's then a matter of informing you that these applications have come in and these ones you can and these ones you can't call in. And so John Toy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, just to be clear, so there are going to be householder applications that we can't call in and they will be decided by officers, but we can write comprehensive reports, views, thoughts to put to planning officers, presumably for part of their consideration. We
Yes,
can write to you as anybody can.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah,
If-
that's not been removed. So,
No, it's not been,
yeah.
so if there are concerns, it would just
Yeah.
be that we could address those through a delegated powers route rather than the
Yeah.
committee route.
Yeah, but we still have the opportunity to raise that challenge.
Yes,
So,
sure.
yeah, it's just trying to understand where the balance for that democratic input is now. It's different before. We used to have to say, I don't think this is right, we want to call it in, whereas now we can have that debate with officers for that decision to then be made. Thank you.
Still a
Councillor
call.
Brown.
Yeah, just briefly following on from that, and presumably we'll need to revise the call-in form and the supplementary notes to it if we're going to preserve that, indeed, if we preserve that form moving forward.
Yes, there's a long list of work streams that I've put together a couple of weeks ago, digging more work, but that's fine. We can do it. Councillor MacDonald.
So if it fits into category 1, are we're still a consultee, we just can't call it in.
We would still send out the weekly list for all his applications and you'll see it on the list, but you won't be able to call that particular application to committee. It's more for awareness, so you know it's in your ward.
Okay, so does anybody have anything else to add to this? We're required to do it. We'll do it to the best of our ability as always. The last bit of the report was on mandatory training, and it's just, you'll see in the report, the government have basically overlooked the national requirement at this stage. They're saying the key bit for them is to get the national scheme of delegation and the number of members through the regulation. So you will continue to have the officer training that you've received from us in the past. Hopefully that's been good enough, but if there's any particular topics that you would like us to cover on future training, then let us know. I mean, it doesn't have to be now. If you think of something, you think actually, yeah, we'd really benefit from this training, then let us know. We can make sure we can give you that training and support you need. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Meeting closed at 8 minutes to 12.